Due to my parents' illness, my family had to suddenly move to the countryside, and I ended up marrying the person I had promised my future to for so long. The reasons were different for each person, but with so many people suddenly quitting, the atmosphere at home was bound to become tense. The vassals who had served the Duke's family for generations, descendants of the Weishaffen estate, were still there, but this huge mansion could not be maintained with just that many people. I see. It must have been hard for you alone. Roderick frowned, as if sorry for leaving her alone in such a difficult situation. It's a little uncomfortable. I have to save someone. Even the babysitter they trusted so much disappeared with Isla. Could they really trust someone they didn't know? But since it was impossible to keep the mansion in such disarray, it was necessary to hire someone. Let's discuss it together and select some trusted employees who are likely to do a good job, Roderick. Ophelia smiled, gently caressing her husband's hand. This time, he vowed not to let the same tragedy happen again. Did you say your name was Laura? Yes, Duchess, I am Laura Spencer. A few days later, Ophelia and Roderick were sitting next to each other, interviewing candidates for the maid position. Normally, these minor interviews were handled by the butler, but Ophelia and Roderick wanted to see and judge the candidates themselves, so they volunteered as interviewers. In fact, the attractive woman sitting in front of them was the first candidate to make it to the interview phase. Due to the rigor of the selection process, there were not many candidates, and most were eliminated in the document review phase. Did you work for the Marquis of Canes? Yes, I have served the young Lady Sanes for the past 5 years. Ophelia and Roderick exchanged surreptitious glances. The Marquis of Canes belonged to a long-established noble family, and although he had no relationship with them, the Emperor trusted him to the point of serving as Minister of Finance. Wouldn't someone who had worked in a place like this for so long be trustworthy? Even the application form included a letter of recommendation from the Marquis. They liked that she didn't seem too nervous, despite being in front of the Duke and Duchess, and that she responded calmly. In situations like this, wouldn't one tend to make mistakes because of being too nervous or hoping to look good? But as much as he liked Laura, something was bothering him that made it difficult for him to make an immediate decision. I was curious to know why he had suddenly left his previous job, where he had worked for 5 years without problems. Neither Roderick nor Ophelia usually delved into the details of their employees' circumstances, but now was the time to thoroughly examine each matter. By the way, may I ask why you left the position of Marquis? When the Duke, who was silently chatting with his wife, asked cautiously, Laura looked at the Duke and Duchess with a slightly embarrassed expression. It seemed like he didn't expect to be asked such a question. Is it a difficult reason to explain? When Ophelia wrinkled her nose slightly, she raised her palms, which she had carefully placed on her lap, and denied it. No, it's not that. Then he began to explain the reason in a whisper. The young daughter of the Marquis of Canes, who she had been serving, had to leave the country because she was marrying a foreign nobleman, and had decided to resign because it was difficult for him to follow her abroad due to the circumstances. So, luckily, the Marquis wrote a letter of recommendation, and I'm looking for someone new to serve. Now that I think about it, I heard something like that. It was about the daughter of the Marquis of Canes becoming engaged to a high-ranking noble from Ropelstein, Ophelia said, tucking her loose hair behind her ear. If it was a rumor that Ophelia, who had been keeping a low profile since the loss of Isla, had heard, it was probably true. If you don't mind, can I ask what the circumstances are? When a noble lady married, it was customary to take her beloved maid from her parents' house. It was understandable why he didn't. Oh, I'm an only child. My mother doesn't want me to be away from her. Laura's face, which had remained practically unchanged until then, blushed in an unusual way. She seemed embarrassed, as if she were an adult overprotected by her parents. It seems like a harmonious family. It's nice to see it. And Ophelia nodded with a pleasant smile at that human appearance. He thought he had seen enough interviews. Could you come out and wait a moment? I'll give you the results shortly. Yes, Duchess. At Ophelia's words, Laura left the room politely. And the couple who was left alone spoke in a low voice. What do you think, Ophelia? I think it's okay. First of all, he liked the impression she gave of someone who seemed like a diligent worker. And if she had been too dignified, he might have been suspicious, but her occasionally human and nervous side made her even more trustworthy. Well, me too. And, since he has been serving a noble lady for a long time, perhaps. Ophelia, who was about to answer her husband's question, looked around and closed her mouth. Although he couldn't finish speaking, Roderick could understand what he was trying to say. It seemed like he was thinking that maybe he could entrust the girl to Isla when he returned later. Yes, then let's hire her. It was a quick decision. And Laura, who received the acceptance notification, smiled shyly, as if she didn't believe it. He seemed genuinely happy. It was natural. Everything she had shown the Duke and Duchess was just an excuse to enter this house as a servant. That wasn't all. The fact that the Duke's servants resigned one by one was also the work of Marquis Canes' subordinates. This involved hurting the maid's father and forcing the daughter to quit her job to take care of him, or pretending to give a large sum of money to the maid's fiancé, who was working to save for the wedding, to bring the marriage forward. Additionally, he intervened in the Human Resources office to block competitors who wanted to apply for the position. Spencer was his mother's maiden name, Capella. It was true that he had served the young daughter of the Marquis Canes, but only for a very short time after she entered the empire from the kingdom of Inselkuf. She was already expecting to be asked why she had left her job as a maid, but she deliberately feigned confusion. It would seem more human that way. Laura Spencer, or rather Laura Eyre, smiled wryly as she unpacked her simple belongings into the room the Duke had provided for her. He fulfilled his purpose of entering Venator first. Now he just had to wait for Isla Weishaffen to return home. While dinner preparations were in full swing, Isla left Debbie and Scott's cabin to gather firewood. You must come back before dark, Isla. Be careful not to get lost. Debbie had been bothering Isla, full of unease. For her, everything was in vain. Not only did she know the geography of the area well, but she also had the strength to deal with strangers and wild animals alone. Still, Isla didn't dislike his insistence. His words were so full of affection that they made her feel good. Yes, ma'am. Isla walked briskly into the forest. It was a truly comforting life without Laura, who watched her suffocatingly, and without Byron, whom she had to please. To the point of finding yourself humming without realizing it. Of course, whenever she went out like this, there were eyes watching her, but knowing that those eyes belonged to Cloud didn't weigh too much on her. Although she still couldn't completely trust him, seeing as she was still alive and well, it was certain that she hadn't told Byron her secret. In the end, it seemed like a useless effort to insist on distrusting Cloud, who was barely keeping his mouth shut. As Isla gathered up some dead branches, huffing at the thought, she heard the faint rustle of leaves behind her. Who are you? He looked around with a nervous face. The branches he had been holding fell to the ground. He had left them to grab the dagger he had hidden in case it was someone other than Cloud or Scott. It's me, miss. Despite his worries, Cloud peeked out. With a discouraged expression, he bent down and began to pick up the fallen branches. It bothered him a little that he had to start from scratch, something he had done for the sake of fuss. I was surprised. Do you have something to say? Capella will come to pick up the lady tomorrow.